Morning. We are learning more about Edward Snowden in our top story this morning. He's the government contractor and former CIA employee who leaked the existence of two high-profile NSA programs that target Americans' cell phones and some of the most widely used Internet providers and social media networks in the world. He revealed his identity through The Guardian, the UK newspaper that originally ran his story. He's 29 years old and reportedly packed up his Hawaii apartment and moved suddenly to Hong Kong in May, claiming a need for medical treatment. He'd been on a consulting job for the NSA for less than 3 months, and in an interview with The Guardian's Glenn Greenwald and filmmaker Laura Poitras, he says he never expects to see his home again, adding his eyes are wide open about what might lie ahead.
I could be, rendered by the CIA. I could have people come after me or any of their third-party partners. We've got a CIA station just up the road in the consulate here in Hong Kong, and I'm sure they're going to be very busy for the next week. And that's a fear I'll live under for the rest of my life, however long that happens to be. You can't come forward against the world's most powerful intelligence agencies and be completely free from risk, because they're such powerful adversaries that no one can meaningfully oppose them. If they want to get you, they'll get you in time.
Director of National Intelligence James Clapper has called the leaks gut-wrenching. The Department of Justice confirms a criminal investigation is underway as many top lawmakers call for punishment to the fullest extent of the law.
And I know your reporter that you interviewed, Greenwald, says that he's got it all and now is an expert on the program. He doesn't have a clue how this thing works. Neither did the person who released just enough information to literally be dangerous. Taking a very sensitive classified program that targets foreign persons on foreign lands and putting just enough out there to be dangerous is dangerous to us. It's dangerous to our national security, and it violates the oath of which that person took. Senator, I absolutely think they should be prosecuted.
You too, Senator Feinstein?
I do.
All right, Mika, so let's bring in right now the Guardian's Glenn Greenwald. Glenn, thank you for being with us. I'm a little confused here. When this story first broke, when your story first broke, we heard a lot of pushback from national security people saying, well, this is nothing new. This has been going on for some time. Nothing to see here. Move along. Now we're hearing it's gut-wrenching, that it's a threat to American national security. Which is it, Glenn?
It's neither of those. The reality is that U.S. government officials for many decades now, and certainly over the last 10 years, have been abusing their secrecy power to shield from the American public not programs that are designed to keep America safe and not to prevent disclosures that would help the terrorists, but to conceal their own actions from the people to whom they're supposed to be democratically accountable. What we disclosed was of great public interest, of great importance in a democracy, that the U.S. government is building this massive spying apparatus aimed at its own population, and it harms nobody. Anyone who wants to say that any of these stories or disclosures have harmed national security, I defy anybody to say anything that we publish that does that in any way. The only people who have been harmed are those in power who want to conceal their actions and their wrongdoing from the people to whom they're supposed to be accountable.
So, Glenn, give us a timeline of this program. How long has it been going on, and is it becoming more intrusive by the year?
Well, there's several programs that we've reported on so far, and there's a lot more coming. So let's take the first one. The first one that the U.S. government is collecting under the aegis of the secret FISA court, the telephone records of every single American on American soil, every single phone call that they make, international and local, and storing those telephone numbers in a database and constructing massive data files that enable all kinds of intrusive surveillance. Experts say that that kind of metadata, as it's called, is even more intrusive than being able to listen in on your phone calls, because it creates this massive picture of you, with whom you speak, where you are, how long you speak with them, what the reasons are. Or you look at what the government is doing with Silicon Valley, these companies that are now the repositories for more communication information about human beings around the planet than any other place. Facebook, Google, Yahoo, Skype, all of them. And this constant negotiation between the government and these companies to allow the government government access to enormous amounts of data, all done in the dark with no public accountability. This is exactly the kind of thing that whistleblowers are supposed to be doing, is coming forward and informing their fellow citizens about what's taking place.
Didn't members of Congress know about this, number one, and aren't all the programs that have been revealed legal?
First of all, as far as whether members of Congress have known about it, many did not. Even the ones who did. Let me direct you and your viewers to two senators in particular, Ron Wyden and Mark Udall. Just go and Google Mark Udall, Ron Wyden, and the Patriot Act. And what you will see is that those senators who are in the Senate Intelligence Committee have been trying to warn Americans vocally as they can for years. They've been saying the following: the way that the Obama administration is interpreting the Patriot Act using secret legal interpretations is so warped and so extremist that, in their words, Americans would be stunned to learn, that's their word, stunned to learn about the surveillance that the Obama administration is engaging in on American citizens.
So what is it?
And yet, why haven't those senators told...
Glenn, what is it that the Obama administration is doing that is so stunning? Can you tell us exactly what they're seeing? I just
told you what it is, Mika. We reported on it. It's that the NSA is collecting the telephone records of every single human being in the United States without any regard to whether they engage in wrongdoing. They're tapping into their online chats, their online calls, their online interactions of every sort. And the problem is that those senators are constrained by law from doing or saying anything about it. So you can say all you want, oh, the White House has gone to Congress and briefed them on it, but when you impose restraints on what they can do about it, even their ability to warn the American public about it, that kind of consultation is impotent. It's meaningless. Even those senators couldn't tell us what they wanted us to know. It took a brave whistleblower to come forward and tell us.
Of course, the president said on Friday, he goes, I welcome a debate with those who disagree with me about these programs. So you can't talk about these programs publicly, so that's going to be a bit of a muted debate. Glenn, I want to continue on just how expansive this program has become and how it's even gone past the original confines of what people expected the Patriot Act to be interpreted as. James Sensenbrenner, who is a Republican, very conservative Republican, who is the author of the Patriot Act, says this goes well beyond what he and others anticipated the Patriot Act to be used for. Can you give us some more specifics about just how much more expansive from what you've told? I mean, I'm sure we're going to learn much, much more in the coming weeks and months, and so many things that we're being told right now will end up not being true as well, because that's the way stories like this go. But from what you know right now, how has this administration and the Bush administration expanded the Patriot Act well beyond what the authors intended originally?
So let me just answer that in two ways. So if you go back and read the debates about the Patriot Act when they were first introduced, the reason the Patriot Act was so controversial was because it was always the case in the past that in order for the government to be able to target individuals and convince a court to let them have access to their records, you had to have probable cause that the person was engaged in wrongdoing. And what the Patriot Act did was it lowered that standard. So it said now all you need is a reasonable basis to believe that the person is involved in wrongdoing before you can get their records. And that was incredibly controversial. It was considered a radical departure from the way that the United States is supposed to work. But even back then, nobody thought, and just go read the debates about the Patriot Act in late 2001, early 2002, nobody had any inkling that the government would ever use the Patriot Act not to target specific individuals and say there's reasonable basis or probable cause to believe they're wrongdoing, but to use the Patriot Act to say this entitles us to collect records for every single American, regardless of whether or not we've done anything wrong. That was never the intention, even by the radical people who advocated the Patriot Act, that is how it would be used. And that's what Senator Wyden and Senator Udall have been saying. And let me just say one other thing. More broadly speaking, what the NSA is, we are putting trillions of dollars into developing extremely sophisticated technology. The objective of this is to enable the NSA to monitor every single conversation and every single form of human behavior anywhere in the world. And if that is something that we want our government to be doing, we should have an open debate about that, not have it done in secret.
An incredibly important question that affects all of us. We have to put it in perspective. I want to bring Richard Haas in, but quickly, I just want an answer yes or no. Isn't it the case that reviewing of emails or any wiretapping cannot take place without an additional warrant from a judge and a review? I mean, it's not like there's haphazard probing into all of our personal emails. Can we put this into context so we understand exactly what's going on?
Yeah, I'll put it into context for you. The White House talking points that you're using are completely misleading and false. The whole point of what the Bush administration did when it disregarded and violated the FISA law, and then when the Congress on a bipartisan basis enacted a new surveillance law in 2008, was to enable the NSA to read emails between people in the United States and people outside of the United States without having first to go to a FISA court and get a warrant. The only time individual warrants are needed is when two people are both inside the United States and are both American citizens. But under that law, the U.S. government and the NSA have the power and exercise the power to listen in on telephone conversations and read emails involving all kinds of American citizens. And the Senate has been repeatedly asking for the numbers of how many Americans they're doing that to, and the NSA keeps saying, and it's false, they can't provide those numbers. So those talking points that you're reading from are completely false, as anybody who's paid even remote attention to the surveillance debates know over the last 10 years.
Glenn, I'd like to ask a question. Is this legal or illegal? Or Richard Haas, can you help me out here since Glenn doesn't want to answer the question? Is the law being broken here?
I did answer your question.
I question the law. I question all the issues that this raises. I'm personally concerned as well, but I'd like to put this in perspective. Is the law being broken?
The law was broken by one person, who was Mr. Snowden. Now, you might think the law is unwise. You may think the policy is unwise. And if that's the case, there are mechanisms for challenging it.
Well, I also think, I mean, the way the law is being interpreted right now is so excessive compared. There's no way in the world. It's amazing. There's no way in the world Congress would have passed this law for the fall of 2001 if they had known this is where we're going to end up.
Congress has had many chances, though, to roll it back. That's the way things work. I wouldn't call it excessive. I would call it expansive.
Can I make a point?
Yeah. Sure, Glenn.
Regarding the question of illegality, let me just say this. The ACLU and other groups have been trying for 5 years now to go into court and challenge the constitutionality of the surveillance law by claiming that it violates the Fourth Amendment. We do have a constitution in the United States regarding searches and seizures. And the U.S. government has successfully blocked any challenge on the grounds that, well, we keep it a secret who it is that we eavesdrop on. And because we keep it a secret, no one person can say they've been eavesdropped on and therefore doesn't have standing in court to challenge the law. So if you want to talk about legality, the Obama Justice Department has repeatedly blocked courts from ruling on the legality, namely the constitutionality of this law. If they think it's so legal, let there be a challenge in court. Don't stop raising procedural issues to have the case thrown out, and let a court decide whether or not this really is legal. And if it's legal, so be it. But there has been no adjudication because they haven't allowed one.
Glenn, we have 3 more people who want to ask questions, and we have like 8 seconds. So let's get moving.
Let it breathe.
Richard Haas, go ahead.
Yeah, Glenn, you said the purpose of this is to empower NSA. I thought the purpose of this was essentially to make the United States safer. And the idea that NSA would have certain expanded capabilities was a means towards an end. But the end here is not to expand NSA. That is simply the way, again, we're trying to make it more difficult for terrorists to do what it is they do. Are you going to deny that this has in any way been helpful?
Yeah, the lesson of the Church Committee from the 1970s was that when you allow people in government to spy on Americans in the dark with no accountability and not make them go to warrants, they abuse that power. And that's exactly what's happened. It's rampant abuse, and it needs sunlight. And that's why this person came forward, and it's why we wrote our stories.
Glenn, it's Willie Geist. You've said, and you just said again, that sunlight is the best disinfectant. We ought to know everything that our government is doing. Where is the line for you? Because a lot of people have pointed out there is a line at which the public shouldn't know about some matters of national security. As you study these things, and you've been on it for a long time, years and years, where is that line for you? Should the public know everything that's going on? And if not, what shouldn't the public know?
Yeah, no, the source himself, Mr. Snowden, went through lots of things and decided that he would withhold lots of documents that would just be harmful for its own sake with no harm. He turned those documents over to us and asked us to be judicious about exercising journalistic assessments, and we've done so. We've purposely withheld all kinds of things that would enable other countries to improve their eavesdropping capabilities, that would uncover the existence of covert agents, things that would actually directly harm people. What we've done is we've published the things that they've marked top secret that don't harm any national security, but that conceal what they're doing from the public.
Hey, Glenn, this is Thomas Roberts. You talk about why transparency is needed. You responded to Congressman Rogers about the part where he said you don't have a clue about what's going on. You said that's why transparency is needed. But isn't this the perfect catch-22? Because we can't have the evidence that proves that this exists to challenge it
and that it's being abused.
And that it's being abused without somebody coming forward like an Edward Snowden, who some people would call a traitor, other people would call a whistleblower. But doesn't it make it the perfect catch-22 that doesn't allow for people to come forward and talk about this because of fear of retribution?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the perfect. I think it's such the crucial point is that, remember, the Obama administration has prosecuted whistleblowers, including ones who came out of the NSA, more aggressively than all prior administrations. In fact, they've prosecuted whistleblowers under the Espionage Act at double the number of all presidents combined previously, worse than George Bush, worse than Richard Nixon. And the purpose of that is to create this climate of fear where people are petrified of coming forward because they don't want to end up prosecuted or like Bradley Manning or now like Edward Snowden. And it takes extreme amounts of courage to do what he did, but it's the only way that we get transparency because that's the way the government has set it up is the wall of secrecy behind which they operate is impenetrable and is a real menace to democracy.
Glenn, what makes Bradley Manning any different from Edward Snowden? Because Bradley Manning is on trial right now. There's not been one press badge released. This is going on a trial in complete secret. His military court-martial right now, but the press is not allowed in to know exactly what's going on. But what makes Snowden any different from Bradley Manning? Because Manning is widely considered to be a traitor, not a whistleblower.
Well, I consider him a whistleblower and a hero, and lots of other people do around the world as well. But if you ask, and the fact that his trial has been kept so secret and that he was sort of disappeared and not heard from for 2 years is one reason why Mr. Snowden was so concerned and wanted to speak out and got himself out of the United States to do that. But if you ask him what the difference is, he will say that he spent months meticulously studying every document. When he handed us those documents, they were all in very detailed files by topic. He had read over every single one and used his expertise to make judgments about what he thought should be public, and then didn't just upload them to the internet. He gave them to journalists who he knew and wanted to go through them each one by one and make journalistic judgments about what should be public and what wasn't, so that harm wouldn't come gratuitously, but that the public would be informed, and that he was very careful and meticulous about doing that.
All right, Glenn Greenwald, thank you very much for coming on the show this morning.
Thank you, Glenn.
Thanks for having me.